Ah, right, I'm back again to talk about these same Mesoamerican books. I'm going to do some readings from some of these in no particular order, which might end up being a bit bizarre. So we will start with 1491 by Charles C. Mann. Um, the Genetics of Vulnerability. In August 1967, a missionary's 2-year-old daughter came down with measles in a village on the Totobi River in Brazil, near the border with Venezuela. She and her family had just returned from the Amazonian city of Manaus, oh, I've been there actually, and had been checked and cleared by Brazilian doctors before departure. Nonetheless, the distinctive spots of measles emerged a few days after the family's arrival on the Totobi. The village, like many others in the region, was populated mainly by Yanomami Indians, a forest society on the Brazil-Venezuelan border that is among the least westernized on Earth. They had never encountered the measles virus before. More than 150 Yanomami in the village were in the village at the time. Most or all caught the disease and 17 died, despite the missionaries' best efforts. The virus escaped and spread through the Yanomami heartland, carried by people who did not know they had been exposed. Partly by happenstance, the US geneticist James Neal and the US anthropologist Napoleon Chagnon flew into Yanomami country in the midst of the epidemic. Neal, who had long been worried about measles, was carrying several thousand doses of vaccine. Alas, the disease had preceded them. They frantically tried to create an epidemiological firebreak. Despite their efforts, the affected villages had a mean death rate of 8.8%. 1 in 10 people died from a sickness that in Western societies was just a childhood annoyance. Neal concluded that the high death rate was in part due to grief and despair rather than the virus itself. Still, the huge toll was historically unprecedented. The implications, implausible at first glance, was that Indians, in their virgin soil state, were more vulnerable to European diseases than virgin soil Europeans would have been. Perhaps, surprisingly, there is some scientific evidence that Native Americans were, for genetic reasons, unusually susceptible to foreign microbes and viruses. One reason that researchers believe that pandemics of Dobnesian scale and lethality could have occurred. We're going to stop reading this book there. Of course, 10% of the population dying from measles is extraordinary, but the scale of the epidemics that's decimated the New World in the wake of European arrival is truly horrific. And this goes on to discuss some of the reasons behind it. Principally a genetic bottleneck in the populations that first moved into the New World. The populations in the New World, as is discussed earlier here, were extraordinarily high. There may have been more people in the New World when Columbus arrived than there were people in the Old World, which is very surprising to me anyway. But because the populations in the New World had all arrived through Siberia, probably across the land bridge during the Ice Age when it was there, the original population was quite small, so the 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 genetic diversity of the population affects how many are susceptible to catch the same strain of diseases. It's the diversity particularly is quantified in the number of a group of something called HLA, the human leukocyte. In any case, this 1491. It's an excellent book. Its companion piece 1493. I wasn't planning on reading anything from, but I'll look briefly at some of the topics covered. It talks about the absolutely extraordinary quantities of silver and gold extracted from the New World. not just originally from the Aztecs and the Incas, but later from very productive silver mines that had huge impacts on Europe's economy. Although bizarrely, Spain managed to go bankrupt at the same time as receiving all of these because they were fighting just so many wars. Um, it also talks about tobacco. What Jamestown was built on in the end. It took them a while to get there, but it turns out that tobacco became a huge cash crop with a large effect. What else is in here? There's quite a lot of talk about rubber, which is a commodity, of course, that came originally from Brazil and was necessary to the Industrial Revolution because you can't really make a high functioning engine without rubber gaskets. And of course, rubber in tires is a strategic resource. Europeans were amazed when they first saw bouncy rubber balls. There was an Aztec team that toured Europe, playing a game called Tlachtli that they played where you keep a rubber ball up with your knees and hips, and Europeans were just amazed. Um, and it also talks about the other species that came across, chilies and potatoes and maize, and all of the pests that were one way or the other. It has a more of a geographical focus. It's still highly recommended. Um, right, 15 poets of the Aztec world. Okay, we're going to read a poem. I've marked the place. Written by a guy called Nezahualcóyotl. Coyotl is dog. Coyote is actually comes from Nahuatl. There's a few words in English that come from Nahuatl. Also avocado, which literally is testicle, which is funny. Chipotle, axolotl, which is a sort of an amphibian that's native to Mexico. If you haven't seen them, they're the cutest things because they always look like they're smiling. Anyway, so this is by Nezahualcóyotl. Nezahual means with a fasting collar. In Aztec society, you would fast for ritual reasons, and while you were fasting, so that people wouldn't offer you food, and so that people would know if you were at their table that you weren't eating because you were fasting, not because you didn't like the food. You would wear a paper collar, and that's called the fasting collar. So his name means dog with a fasting collar. It's often translated as hungry dog, but he's chosen to be hungry. He was one of the three sort of rulers of the Aztec Empire. The Prince of Texcoco, the second most powerful in the Triple Alliance, which was Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlatelolco, the market town. Anyway, Nezahualcóyotl was considered a great sage and is very famous. He didn't live an entirely unblemished life. He built great botanical gardens and was responsible for the aqueducts that brought water into Tenochtitlan. So he was a great engineer and wise man, and a great warrior. One thing that he did do, his favorite wife, one of his lesser chieftains had a girl who he wanted to marry, and they became engaged. And Nezahualcóyotl went to his house one day and liked the look of this girl. So he arranged a war in such a way that that his sub-chieftain died. He sort of ensured his death on the front line so that he could marry his favorite wife. And who went on to give him his heirs. Anyway, here's one of his poems. I, Nezahualcóyotl, ask this. Is it true one really lives on the earth? Not forever on earth, only a little while here. Though it be jade, it falls apart. Though it be gold, it wears away. Though it be quetzal plumage, it is torn asunder. Not forever on earth, only a little while here. He's concerned with mortality, aren't we all? I comprehend the secret, the hidden. O my lords, thus we are mortal, human through and through. We will have to go away, we will have to die on earth. Like a painting we will be erased. Like a flower we will dry up, here on earth, like the plumed vestments of the precious bird, that precious bird with the agile neck, we will come to an end. Think on this, O lords, eagles and tigers, though you be of jade, though you be of gold, you will also go there, to the place of the fleshless. We will have to disappear, no one can remain. I am intoxicated, I weep, I grieve, I think, I speak. Within myself I discover this. Indeed, I shall never die. Indeed, I shall never disappear. There where there is no death, there where death is overcome, let me go there. Indeed, I shall never disappear. Where shall we go where death does not exist? But should I live weeping because of this? May your heart find its way. No one will live forever. Even the princes die. People are reduced to ashes. May your heart find its way. Here, no one will live forever. At last, my heart knows it. I hear a song. I contemplate a flower. May they never fade. My flowers will not come to an end. My songs will not come to an end. I, the singer, raise them up. They are scattered, they are bestowed. Even though flowers on earth may wither and yellow, they will be carried there to the interior of the house of the bird with the golden feathers. I get quite emotional reading some of this stuff sometimes. He says that he will never die because his songs will be preserved. The house of the bird with the golden feathers he refers to as a music house. And we still have his songs. So he's gone to the place where you never die. Which is ink and paper and memory. Um, wow. I'm going to really struggle to get through this next one as well, I'm afraid. Jesus. Uh, let's leave that off for a bit. Okay. Just to recover from Elizabeth Coyle's poem, which I find quite devastating because he does speak to us through such a void of cultural difference, but it's so human. He's worried about his mortality, um, and that he realizes that his songs can live forever, and they sort of do. Anyway, um, as a little bit of an antidote. Okay, okay, as a little bit of an antidote, we're going to move on somewhat jarringly, perhaps, to Bernard Diaz. I've marked out a little passage here where they cross the Rubicon, as it were. Um, so Cortez famously burnt the ships when after they arrived on the coast to prevent anyone from going back to Cuba, which is where they'd come from, and there were many who wanted to return. So to sort of stamp out dissension, he burnt the ships, only ways forwards. Bernard Diaz writes, the ships were destroyed with our full knowledge, and not, as the historian Gomara alleges, in secret. He calls out Gomara a few times. Then, one morning, after Mass, during a general discussion on military matters, after courteously begging for our attention, Cortes made a speech to the effect that we now understood what work lay before us, and with the help of our Lord Jesus Christ must conquer in all battles and engagements. We must be properly prepared, he said, for each one of them, because if we were at any time defeated, which, God forbid, we should not be able to raise our heads again, being so few. He added that we could look for no help or assistance except from God, for now we had no ships in which to return to Cuba, therefore we must rely on our own good swords and stout hearts. So it I'm not sure whether to continue. Um, Cortes went on to develop some comparisons with the heroic deeds of the Romans, and we all answered to a man that we would obey his orders and that the die was cast for good fortune, as Caesar said of the Rubicon, for we were all ready to serve God and his majesty. After this very fine speech, which was more honeyed and eloquent than I have indicated, Cortes at once set for the fat cacique, who's a local chief and ally, um, and reminded him that he must deeply respect the church and cross and keep them clean. He also told him of his intention to leave at once for Mexico, where he would command Montezuma to give up robbery and human sacrifices, and said that he needed 200 Indian carriers to transport his artillery, for as I have already mentioned, they can carry 50 pounds on their backs and march 15 miles with it. He also asked for 50 of the cacique's best warriors to accompany us. Just as we were prepared to set out, a soldier whom Cortes had sent to Villarica with orders that some of the men who were still there should join him, returned with a letter from Juan de Escalante announcing that a ship was sailing along the coast. Escalante said that he had made smoke signals, raised white cloths as banners, and galloped along the shore, waving a scarlet cloak to attract the attention of those on board, and that he believed they had observed all his signals but did not wish to enter the harbour. So he had sent some Spaniards to watch the ship's course, and they had reported that it had anchored near the mouth of a river about 9 miles away. He now wanted to know what to do. Immediately after reading this letter, Cortes put Pedro de Alvarado in command of the whole force at Sempoala, and with him Gonzalo de Sandoval, who was already giving proofs of great valour which he had never failed to show in latter times. This, however, was his first command, and since Alonso de Avila was passed over, there arose a certain friction between the two men. I'm not going to continue. It's so it moves at quite a pace, Bernal Diaz's account. Right after Cortes burns the ships, you see how reliant they are on their local indigenous allies. The fat cacique, as he calls him here, who also was anyway, he was a homosexual and kept a court of boys, which was shocking to Spanish sensibilities. And to some Mexican sensibilities as well. Mesoamerican society was very diverse in its beliefs on these sort of things. Anyway, he's totally reliant on his indigenous allies for food, and oh, the light has changed dramatically. And for transport of his artillery. And then a ship appears, and there's a lot of signalling to it, and you can see that they're actually worried about this ship because Cortes has exceeded his mandate, or what he was permitted to do by Narvilla, the governor of Cuba, who originally authorized Cortes's expedition, but later regretted this and wanted to recall him, and indeed sends armies to recall Cortes. So Cortes has got enemies on both sides, and decides to go and confront Montezuma and accuse him of robberies and stamp out his human sacrifice. So Cortes is his ambition and his single-mindedness. And his ability to operate in a tight spot where he's under a lot of pressure is quite extraordinary. It's a long and fascinating tale. Right, we're not going to read any of the Arts of Mesoamerica or this. We could read some Bartolomé de las Casas, but I will try. Okay, here's a short, fun one. This isn't really representative, so I feel a bit cruel reading this one. But this is from the Fifth Son, and it's a small, tiny little story, but I just think it's hilarious. This is from early Nahua history. Um, the tribe founds a foundling who they call Huemak, who becomes their chief, but it also causes them problems. His name means big gift in Nahuatl. and he's a sort of big gift from the god. When Huaymak became a young man, he gave orders that the Nonahualca, who were another tribe, tend to his home. Then the Nonahualca said to him, "So be it, my lord. May we do what you desire." So, pretty good. The Nonahualca came to tend his home, and then he demanded women of them. He said to the Nonahualca, "You are to give me women. I order that the buttocks be 4 handspans wide." The Nonahualca said to him, "So be it. Let us first seek where we can get one whose buttocks is 4 handspans wide." Then they brought forth 4 women who had not yet known sexual pleasure. But as to size, they were not enough. He said to the Nonahualca, "They're not of the size I want. The buttocks are not 4 handspans wide. I want them really big." The Nonahualca left in great anger. Okay, we'll leave that there. So a little ancient Aztec story. The fifth son is very excellent. I praised it highly, I know, in the book review, which and that's not really representative of the rest of it, but it just is so funny I couldn't omit it. Okay, well, another kind of obscure one, an Aztec herbal. We're going to read an Aztec recipe for curing you. This is to cure one. This is the cure for one harassed by a tornado or evil wind. So if any of you've got having tornado or evil wind problems, maybe you could try this. I hope it helps someone. One who has been caught in a tornado, let him drink the healthful liquor of the plant Quahiahual, the axcochatl, with pine and laurel leaves crushed in water. This broth should be boiled and drunk thus. Drunk, it expels the evil air entering within. Second, take the liquor of these stones, the red crystal, white pearl, white earth, ground up in water, with the leaves of the plant Tlanchlanquayi. Boil this with incense. Anoint him with cypress and cedar nuts and the leaves of the plant Quahiahuatl and those of the plant Shiuecapatli, all ground in water with incense and the liquor carefully prepared. So, if anyone can get through my Nahuatl pronunciation of some of those plants, I hope that helps you. I'm going to just, we're going to have a brief pause now while I blow my nose because I've been crying so much.